In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can use multiple navigation hosts nested within each other. And why do we need that is because when we have an application, usually you might have common composables that will be shared or just that you want to use on, multiple places. And usually that's how composable works. But in some cases, you want them to be used only on one place, but being shared on multiple screens. And here is one example. A lot of applications like this one have the bottom navigation tab, and every tab here is represented as a different navigation from the navigation graph. So maybe nothing new, right? But let's imagine that we have another screens, because an application is not just one screen and containing the bottom navigation bar. 99% of the time you have like very different screens than just this one. And how do we make those other screens? And this is very easy actually, just depending how you structure your navigation from the beginning. Because I've seen a lot of places where people just use the bottom navigation bar as a usual composable, where you just copy it on every different screen and that's how they do it. But that's not how you should do it, because having one component such as the bottom navigation bar, just copy it on different screens, and imagine that you have to also not only place that composable there, but you have to use the functionality of that composable as well, which means that every time you just copy the composable and use it on a new place, you have to just, get the functionality and use that functionality with it as well, which is just annoying and it ruins the purpose of the whole navigation by itself. So in our case here, we have the bottom navigation, and when we are on tab 1, we have those two buttons, which will bring us to another screen and the product details on another screen. And as you can see, we have the bottom navigation just on the first screens, and our other screens don't include it. And let's see how it's done. Let's go to this navigation file and just show you what it includes in our navigations. First, we can check that we have one navigation graph that contains our product list and product details. And when we scroll down a bit, we have another navigation graph will be containing our tabs. Other than that, here there is nothing special. We just have our composables loaded in those navigation graph builders. And that's it. If we check the links that we're passing over here, we can go to our route. And inside it, we have just some constants, which are going to be for our composables in the navigation. I'm just going to show them in a bit. And we have a sealed class, which is going to be helping us just for things to look better. And inside of it, we're just containing every single different screen. And also be tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. We're just setting the names of them. And also we're having the same for the products. When we go to the main activity, I'm just first going to show you how we have structured the navigation hosts. And as you can see, first our main navigation host. So we are going to have a navigation host for everything. For example, let's say we have the functionality like currently we do with the bottom navigation bar. And the other screens are for the product. So these you can say that there are two different huge functionalities in our application. We have like, for example, the dashboard, and then we have the product. And that's like we separate those two in our navigation host. So let's think of it of just a wrapper, the first navigation host, and inside of it we separate every big functionality. And like in our case, we have the first one, which will be the screens with the bottom navigation, and we have a second composable, which will be for the products. Now, in every single composable, as we can see, we have another navigation host on the first one and on the second one. Now, you can already see how we do it. The cool part here is everything that we're going to be sharing is going to be wrapping that second navigation host. So here it is. We have our tab bar, for example, and our navigation host is being wrapped by this dashboard. And this dashboard by itself, when we go to it, we can see that it's only just some, it's just our tab bar, and we also have the main content, which is above the tab bar. So as we can see here, the tab bar is only, a couple of buttons, but they're just staying on one place. We don't have to copy this, composable on multiple screens, and we don't have to use the functionality on multiple screens. Everything that we have that's connected to this bottom tab bar is going to be just here. So that's the awesome part of it. And other than that, I'm going to explain in a bit how we are doing the actual navigation, because that's also very important. But let's go back to the main activity. So as we can see here, we just have this wrapper, and then on the second screens, because we don't have any wrapper in specifically, we just have this box. Maybe, you can have anything you want that needs to be shared between those screens. So let's check the other big part of the application, and which is actually how we are handling the navigation controller, because this is one of the most important things that we're actually doing here. Here is how it is. It's a bit different than maybe you're used to, but what we have here is for every big screen and for the whole wrapper by itself, so every navigation host is having its own, navigation controller. So we're holding them, all of them, in this multiple navigation state, which is just a data class. And this data class, we are using just over here, remember function, that's how we initialize it. And that's all. And inside of it, you can see that we have the multiple navigation app state, which just contains a couple of things. And one of them is just to make things easier for us to get the navigation controller or to set the start destination, which this part is also very important. And I'm going to show it in a bit why. Now, knowing that, let's go back into our main activity. So here, let's just check a couple of things. First, when initializing the first navigation host, we always set it as our route root. So this is our route root, and this is just, the main host that's, wrapping everything. And every time that we want to change from one navigation host to another navigation host, which is the important part, we are always going to be using the route root. So this is how we're handling this skip between, the navigation hosts. And every time we want to navigate between the navigation host that is nested, we're just going to be using, its own route. So for example, the navigation host of the dashboard with the dashboard component, it's called base route. So every time we want to just navigate inside of it, we're going to be using the base route. And the same goes for the product. If we want to navigate inside the product screens, we're going to be using the product route. Another thing we have here is every time that we are inside a composable, we would like to set the navigation controller. And this is because every time the navigation is being recomposed, we would need this new navigation controller. So that's why we're setting it up over here. Now let's go to the single navigation graph and see what we're actually passing here, because usually you'll be passing the navigation controller maybe, and you're going to be passing it down to the different screens and so on. But because we're using this global variable, which is just for the navigation, that's why we don't need to. We have this local navigation state, and yeah, we're just going to be using it through the whole project. Now, of course, you can do it like with different ways, but you need to have this global variable that will just have access to all the navigation controllers. And the other important thing here is actually when we are creating the navigation, we have the start destination. And this is important in cases where, let's say, we already saw it actually in our emulator, but let's say we want to go from our tab navigation host, we want to go to the product list, and we go to it. And remember, this is another navigation host. So the way we actually move, like we said, is we move through the different screens by using, through the different navigation hosts by using the root route. So the root route doesn't know about any of the inner navigation graphs. So we cannot say we want to go to the product list screen and he knows about it. No, we have to say that we're going to the base route. And the same goes for the product. If we go to the product, we want to go to the product route. But we might want to just go to one of the screens that are contained in the product route, right? So how we do it is we have this start destination. So every time we want to change the start destination, that's how we actually manage to go to different screens from one navigation host to another navigation host. That's why we can do here when we click to the product list, and then when we click on the product details, we just go to the product details, which is contained again in a different host than our dashboard, let's call it like that. When we go to the main activity again, and we go to the actually button clicks to see what's happening, we can see exactly what we're doing. And here we're getting the navigation, we're getting the product navigation, and we're setting what we want to be the start destination. So because we want to, when we click the button for the product list, we want to go to the product list, we set the start destination to it. And the same goes for the product details. When we want to go to the product details, we set the destination to the product details. And then we're navigating through the navigation host that is wrapping the inner navigation hosts, which is our route one. And we're just navigating to the product route. Other than that, our dashboard is very simple. We're just navigating inside every navigation host like normally you would. You're just getting the navigation controller and navigating to the, to the screen that you want. And as you can see, by just having this setup over here, and it's not that complicated, and it's actually very nice using it just because of this shared dashboard in our case. And you will have like many shareable components around your application that might need this way of programming or developing, stuff. So I think you'll find that very useful, just having it, in your application. That was it for this tutorial. I hope you liked it. And if you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more.